Hi everyone, and welcome back to Rough Rider, where every week I talk writing, self-publishing, and making it as an author. I'm trying out something new. So getting a good book cover isn't always easy for self-publishing authors because you might be on a budget and just can't afford to hire a graphic designer. So if you can't hire someone to do it for you, it means you're gonna have to do it yourself. And if you don't really have any experience with design or you just don't have an eye for it, you could very easily end up with a bad cover. So if you're new to graphic design and you don't really know what to do, there's some basic elements that are common to all good book covers that you can include to make your book cover look better. The first element of a great book cover is that the text is clear and legible. I think this is probably the most important element of all. The text on your book cover should be easy to read. You know, if someone's taking a really quick look at your book, they shouldn't have to squint to figure out what it is that they're reading. Your name should be clear, the title of the book should be clear, and there's different ways to ensure that clarity. I think the easiest way is to not choose some sort of really complicated and very fancy font. Avoid calligraphy, avoid cursive scripts. They're just not as easy to read as block text. You know, if it has all these curls and flourishes and stuff, it's just harder for someone to quickly figure out what it is the title of the book actually is. So don't use an overly ornate font. But there's more to legibility than just the font choice. You gotta also make sure that the colors that you pick contrast well enough with the background that the text is very visible, but you don't want it to be so contrasted that it clashes and hurts your eyes. So play around with the colors and see what really stands out, but not too much, and pick a simpler font. It doesn't have to be boring, but it shouldn't be something crazy. Now, the second element of a great book cover is that the fonts are professional. So continuing with the font issue, you should pick one that's generally considered to be professional or is used professionally on book covers. Obviously, this is kind of subjective, but there's certain fonts that I would say just avoid it at all costs. Papyrus and Comic Sans and Algerian, things like that. Those are the kinds of fonts that elementary school teachers use in all their classroom handouts. Like, this is the stuff on like the title of a multiplication table page or the title of some sort of spelling quiz. Like, don't do that. It looks bad, it looks cheap, and it looks amateurish. I don't know why, but it seems like a lot of people who design their own covers seem to lean towards these fonts. I don't know if they want to use papyrus, if they have some sort of like magical or ancient theme or what, but it just doesn't look good. Just don't do it. It looks cheap. It looks like PowerPoint when you were a kid and you had to design some little stupid presentation and everyone picks stuff like that with crazy animations. Just don't do it. Pick a more neutral font. Again, it doesn't have to be boring, but it shouldn't be something that stands out so much that it's just jarring and really takes away from everything else. It's just gonna fit in better with professional book covers and people aren't gonna immediately judge you as an amateur. Now, the third element of a great book cover is that it reflects the book's tone. You gotta think of your cover like a preview of your book, so you don't wanna mislead your readers into thinking they're gonna be reading one thing when really they're gonna be reading something else if your cover really doesn't match the tone of your book. Pick a color palette that really matches the emotion and the atmosphere of your book. If you wrote something that's very grim and very dark, don't use really bright colors on the cover that are very cheerful. Or if your book is really cheerful and comical, don't use some really subdued image on the cover that's going to make it seem like it is very solemn and serious. Stick with warm colors if you have kind of like a fiery, very action-packed or high-energy book, and stick with cooler colors if it is just a little bit more subdued. If you pick the right color palette, it's just going to keep readers from expecting an experience that you never intended to provide. You don't want to disappoint them, even though I guess it was really them who made an assumption about the book just based on the book cover. But people are going to do it, so just work with that. The next element of a great book cover is that it includes a tagline or reviews. This is another thing that can draw in a potential reader. Like, if you've settled on a hook for your book series or your book, like a little tagline that you use either in the product description or when you're describing it to other people, put that on the cover. Like, the Aether verse is really politically incorrect, so the tagline for that is "outer space is not a safe space." I use it on everything, so it's in the social media profiles for that book, it's on the cover of the book, it's on the website, it's everywhere. That's a little catchy phrase that I use to really brand the book. So if you have something like that yourself, then put that on the book cover. If you don't, that's fine. There's other things you can put. You could always put a review. If your book's been out for a while and you're just going back and revising the cover, and you do happen to have some decent reviews for it, you can always pull from one and put it on the cover of your book. If you don't really have any, or you don't have any that are particularly useful, you could kind of work around that and pull from your actual product description, and you can use that on the cover. Just don't attribute it to anyone because obviously that's going to be lying, but you could put it in quotes if you want. You are technically quoting something. People aren't going to think that far into it. They're going to see something in quotes and they're going to be like, oh, this is something that has been said about the book. You don't necessarily have to be quoting someone else. It's just going to look good on the cover. It really increases your chances of catching someone's eye and drawing them in. And another element of a great book cover is that everything's aligned properly. This can take a little trial and error. It's not as straightforward as you'd think. Sometimes you're just not going to get it right on the first try, and you're going to have to upload your book to whatever platform you're using for self-publishing to figure out if it really was aligned properly. properly. If you're doing an ebook cover, it's really not that hard because it's just the front. That's it. So if you're doing this on your computer, you can always center everything, and that's not too bad. But if you're dealing with a print book, you're going to be dealing with the front cover, the spine, and the back cover. There's a lot more parts to this that could end up being skewed and not really aligned properly. You know, the spine could be misaligned. The text might kind of bleed over onto the front or the back cover if it's not lined up right. Or the text on the front can just be a little bit too far to one side and it just looks weird. Or it could get cut off entirely. So after you've designed your book cover and you upload it, it's going to generate a preview for you that shows just the front of the book. It's basically going to cut the print file and the print layout that includes the back, the spine, and the front cover, and it's only going to display what it perceives to be the front cover. It bases this purely on dimensions. It's not really looking at what's on the cover. So once you have that, you're going to be able to see, is the front cover lined up right? All you have to do is look at that image and you'll see. But that's only for the front cover, so you should order proof copies of your book before you decide you're going to start distributing it. So they'll print one for you, they'll mail it to you, and then you get to look at this and you'll see what is wrong here. That's when you make adjustments. It can be annoying though, because you might have to do this a bunch of times, but when you do eventually get it right and it looks right and it is aligned correctly, it's just going to look way more professional than if you had elements to it just kind of all over the place. It's just going to look cleaner and people are going to take it a lot more seriously. So the things that can make a book cover bad are actually fairly small things. So they're pretty easy to fix if you are guilty of those. If you already have a book cover and it's missing these elements and it doesn't look as great as you want it to, don't worry, you can always just redesign it and upload it again. You don't even need a new ISBN if you're changing your book cover, so it's really an easy change. There's nothing you have to do other than just upload it and design it, I guess. And if this is your first time designing something, you're not sure what software to use, I'm going to put some links to free image editing software that you can use for your book cover. I'm also going to put a link to a previous video that I had made that talks about where you can get stock art and stuff like that for your cover. So yeah, even small changes like this can make a bad book cover into a decent one, and you don't have to be a graphic designer to do it. So if you want to read the full blog post about this, I do have a link in the description as always. And if you found it interesting or helpful, please like and subscribe, follow me on social media, and as always, thank you for watching. God bless.